Today on the MrMaple Show podcast, Tim and Sean count down the top 75 weeping Japanese maples, 50 through 26.
Howdy, and welcome to the MrMaple Show podcast. Last week, we brought you the top 75 weeping Japanese maples from 75 to 51. This week, we're bringing you the top 50 from number 50 all the way down to 26. Y'all, if you like Japanese maples, make sure you're subscribed here on the MrMaple Show podcast. We put out weekly content all about Japanese maples and gardening. Make sure that you're subscribed here. We'd appreciate it.
So we've got the top 75 weeping. So this is 50 through 26. And I just want to say, before we just jump into it, from a landscaper's point of view, these weepers are really, really, really cool because you can use these in place of other types of plants in your garden. You can use them almost shrub-like in your garden, and you get that spring color, you get that summer color, and you get that fall color that you wouldn't normally get out of some shrubs and plants.
That's very true. I mean, a lot of times people, when they think about a shrubby like Japanese maple, for a beginner, they often think of a weeping Japanese maple. They often think about that weeping, cascading look. Before we get into the list, starting at number 50, we've got one on our honorary list, and this is because somehow it missed our list. So we were going through it, and I said, whoa, somehow I missed Washi no, and I thought Washi no would somehow fit in this next 50 to 26, so we're throwing in there today. Washi no, also known as Palmatophydium, also known as eagle claw. This is a weeping lace leaf that has a very elongated lobes, very thin sublobes, and a low spreading out habit, very claw-like structure, and that's why the name Washi no, which actually translates as eagle's tail, is the same thing as eagle claw. And, you know, you may see eagle claw written that it's a more dwarf selection than Washi no. It grows at the same growth rate. So, unfortunately, it was just a mistranslation, and they are the same plant. And it was just, you know, older plants with the name Washi no are bigger than the newer plants that got the name eagle claw on it. So keep that in mind. Washi no, awesome plant though, low spreading out habit. Sean, let's jump into number 50.
Let's get into it. Number 50, we got Acer circinatum, Elias Pacific Waterfall.
Yeah, I mean, that is a weeping nativar. I mean, it's a native selection in the Pacific Northwest, and this is a weeping selection that is likely, very much likely, a hybrid with a Japanese maple.
And don't get this confused with Waterfall or Veridis. You got completely different looking leaves, and most of these trees that we're talking about today are going to fit into that zone 5 to 9, and this one though we're looking at zone 6 to 9 with those big leaves.
Yeah, and that's just because it's an Acer circinatum. We don't grade those down to zone 5. A zone 5 hardiness is a temperature of negative 20 degrees. Zone 6 is negative 10. Just so you know about that. But being an Acer circinatum, this has those round full moon-like leaves and that strong weeping habit. There's not a lot like that, and that's one of the reasons this tree is really special and unique. There's never been, until this new introduction of Elias Pacific Waterfall, there's never been a weeping selection of Acer circinatum that's really got out into the trade. This one's a brand new one. I think it's going to become more popular, very much like Pacific Fire, the more people grow it. With Acer circinatums, though, I do recommend giving some protection from the hot afternoon sun in hotter climates. They are native in the Pacific Northwest, so this is a tree that does phenomenal in the Pacific Northwest. It also can do well in the Northeast. It can do well in the South. I've seen some in Texas if given the proper conditions, and that's typically good drainage and some protection from that hot afternoon sun.
And you're looking at about 4 to 5 foot, both height and width, in about 10 years.
So, guys, coming at number 49, we've got Acer Japonicum Fairy Lights. This is a selection from Down Under, and y'all, this is a Acer Japonicum selection that's one of our customer favorites, but it's one I love too. I mean, just with those really delicate, deeply divided leaves. This one is one of the slowest growing Acer Japonicums.
So most people think of, Acer Japonicums as these big, more upright trees. This is actually a dwarf, because you're only looking at about 5 foot to 4 foot in 10 years. Just such a great, and just like most of these, but these Japonicums really known for their fall colors.
And Fairy Lights doesn't disappoint in the fall. I mean, you get those yellows to oranges in the fall, infused with red. It is perhaps one of the best fall color Japonicums, and is perhaps one of the slowest growing Japonicums, making it excellent for that fairy garden. Fairy Lights, selection by the same guy who introduced Peaches and Cream. This selection from Australia is just next level. And when we list it, 1 gallons typically aren't very large, and that's because it is a very slow growing tree. Most of our 1 gallons we sell at Mr. Maple are basically 2 years from graft. And that means that this Fairy Lights isn't going to be very large because it is very slow growing. And that's something that people always need to be aware about is, some of these dwarf selections, in a 1 gallon, a 2-year tree are still going to be very small at the time when you purchase them.
So coming in at number 48, we have Acer Palmatum Heartbeat.
Heartbeat one that's impressed me. I mean, it's got some really picked up red colors on it and a nice overall weeping selection for a red lace leaf.
So this is one that's going to be, you're going to get wider than in height. You're looking at about 3 to 4 foot in height by 4 to 5 foot in width. And just the red colors that it goes throughout the season is just, with the spring red and then the summer red and then the fall red that really pops.
Yeah, I mean, this is a selection by Elliot Groves in New Zealand. He's actually visited the nursery here. He was the owner of Stepping Stone Nursery. And, back in the day, the hype was a lot of people were bringing all these trees in from New Zealand. And Elliot actually came to our nursery and, was here at the nursery going around trying to get us to buy from him. And then all of a sudden, after he looked around our nursery, he saw how many cultivars we had, and he was like, guys, how can I get some of these trees from you? So it's kind of funny because he was trying to want the reverse to happen where he could get some of the cool cultivars that we grow. But Heartbeat is one of his selections, and I think it's a solid red lace leaf. It's underrated. It's got a great name, and it does have a more picked up red with a nice weeping habit and some good red fall color. That's an excellent selection coming in at number 48.
Okay, moving right along at number 47, we have Acer Palmatum Toyama Nishiki.
Yeah, I mean, this is a variegated lace leaf. It's one of the first variegated lace leaves coming on this list that is quite different. I mean, you get some of those bronzing colors with some pinks and whites in the early spring. It is a next level weeping lace leaf.
Now, this is one that you might know. Its reversion is Nancy Legacy, and this is one that you will want to prune for that variegation.
Yeah, and if you see any branches on Toyama Nishiki that do become unvariegated, just prune those out. You really need to prune this for the variegation, but I will say that the unvariegated form that is Nancy's Legacy is amazing as well, and we'll talk about it for a second as well because it is a next level tree. I mean, in the spring colors, you get some great pink colors. Nancy Fears, who had mountain maples, she was known for loving the reversion on Toyama Nishiki. And that's why this tree became Nancy's Legacy. After she had passed, it became Nancy's Legacy, and people realize how beautiful a tree this is because you get amazing spring color, but then you also get some amazing, just like pink-orange fall color off of a Nancy's Legacy, which again is the reversion of Toyama Nishiki. Now, Toyama Nishiki, to get back onto Toyama Nishiki, is amazing because you get all those same colors of Nancy's Legacy, but variegation on there as well. A neat thing to note about Toyama Nishiki is Hanamatoi was found as a seedling from Toyama Nishiki. And so there's a lot of cool things that can be found by looking through seedlings of some of these variegated lace leaves. And you even can find more variegated uprights that can look something almost like rainbow, but with more Toyama Nishiki colors.
And you're looking at about 3 to 4 foot with width and height. So now moving right along, number 46, Acer palmatum Hoshizora.
So this comes with one of our second trips to Japan and visiting Kobayashi Momiji Inn. Kobayashi Momiji Inn introduced Mukiyama. They introduced Ryusen. When we visited them, Hoshizora was all the craze. This is their newest selection with that weeping habit. When we visited them, they actually told us to get this into the nursery trade. The name Hoshizora means starry night.
So this is also a seedling from Ryusen. You all know Ryusen, or if you don't, check it out. But this is a seedling from Ryusen, but its colors are even brighter. Those fall colors get even brighter than Ryusen do.
And it does have that similar shape of Ryusen and similar leaf. So it's got that palmate leaf, that heavily cascading habit. You can stake this tree up just like you can Ryusen and play with all the different shapes, whether you want to grow this in a hanging basket, a topsy-turvy, or just let it grow out as a ground cover, or stake it up and have that fountain-like effect that many people do. This is an amazing weeping selection, and I'd say it's heavily underrated. We're one of the few people who carry it in the United States, and I'm telling you, it is a next-level tree. It's pretty awesome, and it's said to have more vibrant and brighter colors in the fall than Ryusen. To me, awesome plant coming here at number 46.
Okay, coming in at number 45, we have Acer palmatum Asayaki.
Now, Asayaki is a seedling selection by Neil Facillo Ramsey. He's actually a friend of ours down in Georgia, and he is a voice actor. So he does a lot of voice acting. It's kind of cool. And so sometimes you'll see him as Neil Facillo, or you'll see him as Neil Ramsey. That's sort of, one of them is his stage name. Asayaki is this next level lace leaf that he found. And if you give it sunlight, it has some yellow color to it and a little bit of a border in the early spring. The thing that Talon Buchholz was really impressed by, as he often is how a tree performs in the greenhouses, how a tree performs. And in small containers, Asayaki even gave amazing fall colors for him. And he was taking photos of it in fall color and saying, Tim, we need to be doing more of this one. And I'm glad he did, because when we bought the place, he had it in production. So that meant that now we can keep it in even a higher level production than we had it before.
Yeah, those fall bright oranges and red that it gets. And it's a fairly heat tolerant maple. And you're looking at about 6 to 8 foot to 5 to 7 foot in width over 10 years.
I think that this tree, again, is one of those selections that people are going to fall in love with. And when you start to realize it's not your typical green, it's not your typical lace leaf that you think of. It has that nice weeping habit, but it just gives you some next level colors.
Okay, coming in at number 44, we have Acer palmatum lemon lime lace.
Now, this is a selection by Del Laux, and it's a weeping selection that has some really nice yellow colors.
You know, when I first started working for MrMaple, I remember going out and looking at tags, and it was just LLL. And then sometimes they'd get flipped upside down. And I remember, what is 777? What is this tree 777? No, it's lemon lime lace. Such a great tree. You're looking at about 4 foot in height, 6 foot in width in 10 years. And the fall colors, just those, like you say, those yellows, but those falls, you'll get those yellows into those oranges. Just an awesome, awesome tree.
Yeah, I mean, the Lucky Sevens tree, right?
Right.
This is, if you're looking for something with that waterfall type shape, but you're looking for something that gives you some of that yellow color on the new growth, I mean, that's what you get with lemon lime lace, is this more brighter, more picked up green weeping lace leaf. And it's not, it's becoming more common in the nursery trade because it does stand out from the other selections that are out there. And it's got a great name. I mean, who doesn't want a Lucky Sevens?
That's right. Okay, coming in at number 43, Acer Shirasawanum Green Snowflake.
Now, Green Snowflake is one of the first of its kind. It's an Acer Shirasawanum selection with deeply divided leaves. You can look into the leaf and see that it's got that full moon genetics. And it was a selection that was found actually by Dr. Jim Baggett at Oregon State University. Him and Dr. Al Mosley had developed a breeding program starting with Shirasawanum palmatifolium and then JB50, which later became Sensu. From those breeding works came Green Snowflake, and they gave these trees to Talon Buchholz, who went and put names on much of these breeding selections. And this is one of the first weeping Acer Shirasawanums. It's got that heavy weeping habit. It kind of sprawls out as it's weeping, but it's got a lace leaf Shirasawanum leaf.
And it being a Shirasawanum, you know you're going to get those killer fall colors. You're looking at 3 to 4 foot in height by 4 to 5 foot in width. And this is one that you will want to give some protection from that hot afternoon sun.
Yeah, that's very true. If you're growing this in deep shade, you'll really get some nice, rich green colors in the early spring. With a little bit of sunlight, some morning sunlight, you'll get some bronzing in there. And the fall colors on it are going to give you some really nice yellows to oranges in the fall with Acer Shirasawanum Green Snowflake.
Okay, coming in at number 42, Acer Palmatum Giro Shadari. Or is that Euro? Do we do the Euro like we do some of these?
No, this is Giro. Giro Shadari is named after Jiro Kobayashi of Kobayashi Momiji Inn. He's the elder statesman that was at Kobayashi Momiji Inn when we visited their nursery on our very first trip to Japan. And it was very interesting because, Matt and I are out there talking to one of the younger caretakers of the nursery, one of the younger grandsons of the nursery. And he comes out and says, I say younger, he's about my age. But he comes out there and starts talking to us and learns who we are. And as soon as he learns who we are, he motions his grandfather, who was smoking on the porch, and his grandfather comes down to meet us. And it was such an honor to get to meet Jiro Kobayashi, who Jiro Shadari is named after. And such an honor to be able to meet him and just talk things with him. But they were really chumming it up with me and Matt. And the translator was like, why do you like these guys so much? And Jiro explained, I've been on their website. They have some nice things to say about us at Kobayashi Momiji Inn. And we do. They've introduced some amazing selections. Jiro Shadari is the parent tree to Ryusen. And it has a really nice arching weeping habit that is just extremely beautiful.
And you're looking about 4 to 5 foot in height and 6 to 8 foot in width. So moving right along, we've got number 41, Acer Palmatum, Monticello Gardens.
Now, Monticello Gardens is a selection by a guy named Richard, who's a customer and a friend of ours that down in the Monticello area in South Carolina. This has nothing to do with the president and Monticello. This has to do with Monticello, which is just north. It's Monticello. There's a lake there, just north of Columbia, South Carolina. And it's an extremely weeping seedling that Richard had found and brought to us. And guys, we love this selection because it's fairly heat tolerant and it holds its color extremely well.
So you're looking about 3 to 4 foot in height, 4 to 5 foot in width in 10 years. And with this, you're going to get a brighter red. And this is a great, great container.
It is. In fact, my mom had it for years at Maplewood Gardens in a container there in the gardens itself. And it just keeps putting on that brighter red color over top of that deep burgundy color. For a lace leaf that can handle the sun, this was an immaculate selection. It actually was a seedling he found in a batch of rootstock. So these were seedlings that he was going to graft to, and one of them came out not only lace leaf, but came out as a seedling that was exceptional. And, it's so cool how some of these things start. But Monticello Gardens, an awesome lace leaf coming in at number 41.
Coming in at number 40, Acer Palmatum, Sweet Lorraine.
Now, this is a newer selection by Talon Buchholz. Years ago when I went and visited him, he had some seedlings out that had reticulation, and I told him they were next level and he needed to really evaluate them. And I first originally thought that Sweet Lorraine originated from that batch of seedlings. And I actually think Sweet Lorraine was a little bit older than that he had been evaluating. Talon did some digging, and the history of Sweet Lorraine is actually an amber ghost seedling, which is pretty striking because amber ghost is this upright tree, not even a deeply divided leaf. But here we've got Sweet Lorraine with a deeply divided lace leaf, but with a reticulated variegation with some of those pink-orange kind of colors that just grab your attention in the early spring.
I really love the variegation on this one. You're looking at about 4 foot height in 10 years. And when we were going through the Buckles Floral Wonder blog, he really talked about this one with the name that the song Sweet Lorraine struck a chord with him. And that's kind of how this got that name, Sweet Lorraine.
That's so cool. I mean, to me, this is a next level tree. I mean, we've got filigree, which is also known as green filigree. That's a reticulated lace leaf. And then this selection is just simply next level. I mean, you get all the different colors with it that just give you something extra in the early spring. Being this is a reticulated lace leaf, I'd make sure you want to give some protection from the hot afternoon sun. It is amazing and has that does tight, slower growing habit to it. It's totally a next level plant. Coming in here, Sweet Lorraine at number 40.
Okay, coming in at number 39, we have Acer palmatum Looking Glass Falls, right out of the Area 51 collection.
Yeah, Looking Glass Falls was a chance seedling that we found. We had it as part of our Nakakomoto Weeping Legacy seedlings. And in the springtime, it has a really nice red border, like red tips to it in the early spring. We named it after a local waterfall here, Looking Glass Falls. Nakata-san, who was actually one of the gentlemen that showed us Nakakomoto Weeping, actually took him to go see Looking Glass Falls when he came to visit us here earlier this fall. And he was just enthralled by the beauty. And he said, this looks like a Japanese garden. Well, that's what we were looking at with Looking Glass Falls, is it has this heavily strong weeping habit. It looks like Looking Glass Falls, and it's just straight down cascading, but with that little extra something with that red sort of tipping to it in the early spring.
And this is one of those great ones that you can stake up. And if you do stake it up, you're looking at about 5 to 6 foot in height by 4 to 5 foot in width in 10 years. But if you don't stake it, this is one of those that you could use as ground cover or even in like a hanging basket. We have customers that put it in a basket and let it weep down and hang over. Just an excellent, excellent tree.
And for us, Looking Glass Falls has proven to be fairly heat tolerant, vigorous, easy to train into shape. This is a selection that I think more people need to be looking at, no pun intended, at Looking Glass Falls.
Okay, coming in at number 38, Acer palmatum Pink Ballerina.
Pink Ballerina is basically a dwarfer, more slower growing, darker red Hanamatoi. Some people may not be familiar with Pink Ballerina. It is a red, slow growing, deep red lace leaf with some pink variegation to it.
So, a lot of people might think it's similar to Hanamatoi, but the red leaf is darker and overall growth rate is a lot slower.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's a selection by Karen Yunker, some of our friends in the UK. We've actually Matt went and visited them in England not too long ago. And, it is so cool that they've found and introduced this selection. You don't see many people introducing many small, slow-growing dwarf red lace leaves over there, especially her model for Japanese maples, are trees more like Trompenberg and trees that are larger growing and trees that make a big specimen out in the garden. So this really didn't fit her mold, even though she introduced it into the trade. But it is a highly prized collector tree that is difficult to find, slow growing, and it is a variegated lace leaf. And it's a variegated lace leaf with splotched variegation, where you see those little splotches of pink and white that are just across different portions of the leaf. This means that style variegation, like Toyama Nishiki, you need to make sure that you prune out any reversions on the style. And Yano's book for maples says these should be propagated with best cultural practices. What does that mean? That means you graft it from the variegated forms. You graft it from the variegated branches. And sometimes that means on these variegated lace leaves, you actually need to prune out the reversions. And if you don't, you actually need to tag the good branches so you know which branches to graft from if you're grafting during those winter months.
And this one you're looking at about, so when we say dwarf, we really mean dwarf 3 foot in height and width in 10 years. And this one you want to give it some protection from the hot afternoon sun to get those best colors.
Coming at number 37, we got Acer palmatum Watnong.
So Watnong, this one, so you're looking at about 6 foot in height, 8 foot in width in 20 years. So you're even talking about even slower than some of the other ones. And the fall colors on this one, that's really what stands out to me, is the fall colors on this one with the intense oranges and going to those fiery reds.
Yeah, this is a colorful lace leaf that is just keeps giving two-tone colors throughout the season. You often get some of those pink purples, pink oranges on top of lime greens. Contrasts against itself all season long. And Watnong is a selection from New Jersey, from Watnong Nursery. It was a chance seedling that they found and named after their nursery. But this has been it's been a tree that's been very dependable for heat tolerance in the Southeast. And it's been very impressive to me on how much sun it can handle and how much heat it can. Our good late friend Pat Dye, Coach Pat Dye of Auburn University, was a Japanese maple collector, and he actually had a nursery as well. And Watnong was one of his favorite selections because it could handle the heat down there in Auburn, but it also had some really nice orange fall color, as he often exclaimed, especially during football season.
Coming in at number 36, Acer palmatum, Emerald Lace.
Emerald Lace is another selection that was introduced in the nursery trade by Del Laux. Oddly enough, Del Laux was in Junction City, Oregon. Many people may know that from Animal House, but it is actually this particular tree was found by David Sabo in Charlotte, North Carolina area. And David Sabo was a Japanese maple collector. We've met some of his relatives. This is an interesting lace leaf because it's weeping, but it has a leaf that's identical to Seiryu. And so it's got that Seiryu-like leaf. And Seiryu, is the only upright lace leaf. But Emerald Lace has that more weeping habit, but has that same leaf. So very interesting. I don't know if it was a broom. I don't know exactly if this was a chance seedling from Seiryu, but it's definitely related. But it does have its vigor and heat tolerance and fall color.
So this is going to be one that's going to get wider than the height. You're looking about 3 to 4 foot in height, 6 to 8 foot in width in 15 years. But this one is, just like Seiryu, heat tolerant and a vigorous grower. So you have those common, but you got that weeping form.
And you get some good red fall colors out of Emerald Lace, which helps distinguish it from many other lace leaves. I mean, the leaf is very distinctive as well. But when you have a Veritas or a Waterfall out there in the garden, which Veritas and Waterfall are the same plant, and you have them go into a yellow in the fall, or many other weeping green lace leaves go to yellow, this one is very distinctive that you get that red fall color on it. And exceptional lace leaf, one of the most heat tolerant weeping lace leaves that you can grow. If you're actually in a very hot zone, this may be number one. I probably rank this one too high at 36 because it is a tree that is very durable and easy for people to grow.
Okay, coming in at number 35, Acer palmatum, Yellow Cascade.
Yellow Cascade was a seedling that Talon Buchholz was evaluating from his Rising Stars collection. He calls the Rising Stars basically many of the seedlings that he's collected and seeing if something develops into a named cultivar worthy tree. We were looking at Dragon Master. He had Yellow Cascade and Golden Falls at the same time. And Yellow Cascade stood out because it had a butter yellow color. And you don't get any of the oranges that you can get on the tips of Golden Falls. You don't get any of the oranges that you get on the new growth of Dragon Master. But you get that Ryusen-like habit, but with that butter yellow color. The habit is like Ryusen, extremely cascading, one of the most weeping forms of anything. But when you get that yellow color in the landscape, man, you make everything else pop. And that's what I love about Yellow Cascade. I do think that from Golden Falls and Dragon Master, Yellow Cascade may be one of the lesser sun-tolerant selections because it is more yellow. But I'm telling you, the yellow color is amazing. Give it some protection from the hot afternoon sun. In hotter climates, you'll be all right. And if you give it some sunlight, you can get some of that bleached out yellow colors later on in the season that make this tree appear even more yellow from afar.
And those yellows in the garden are so important. It can lighten up those darker spots. This is one of those, like the Ryusen, that if you want a little bit more height on it, you can stake it up. If not, another one of those that does great in a container or as a ground cover.
Yeah, I mean, an awesome selection. Currently at Buckholtz Nursery, we purchased it last year, and we still have the original Golden Falls and Yellow Cascade in boxes side by side. Very neat thing, though, for the first time this year, the original Yellow Cascade through seed. So I'm personally super excited because I'm hoping to be able to look through seedlings from Yellow Cascade and see if we can continue on and see what genetics that has and what may come out in the future. Our media manager, Corbin Wildcat, he always says every seed is like a lottery ticket. You don't know what you're going to find until you actually get it, plant it, and see what pops up. And if you don't get that seed and plant it, you're never going to know. And so I'm super excited to figure out what's coming from those seeds we found from Yellow Cascade.
Coming in at number 34 with a really awesome name, Acer palmatum, Dragon's Fire.
That is a good name, isn't it?
It is a great name.
I mean, you know, we got some plants out there like Dr. Brown, and then you got Dragon's Fire. You know, what are you going to go with? And Dr. Brown's a great tree. I'm not going to diss Dr. Brown on the tree itself, but the name, horrible name. Horrible name. Dragon's Fire, way cooler name.
So you're looking at about 3 foot in height and 6 foot in width in 10 years. So it's one of those that's going to stay shorter but get wider. But the fall colors on this are just outstanding.
Yeah, they really are. And I guess you'd put it in like the ornatum type group. There's some different selections like Mayune, ornatum, Emma. You know, a lot of trees that have that orange-red kind of color. I'd say Dragon's Fire has some of the best fall color of any of them. And that's the reason why it ranks very high on my list for that ornatum type group. It is outstanding, though. I mean, with that yellows and oranges infused when you get it in the fall, it's a next level lace leaf, and it's got a good name. And when a tree's got a good name, that means more people are going to put it in their garden, and that means more people can enjoy it. And that gives it a better trade as well. You know, sometimes people say here at MrMaple, we didn't name Dragon's Fire. This is a selection from Europe. But people often say that we give trees too good of names. I'm like, man, if it's a good tree and you don't put a good name on it, I mean, that's a way to kill a tree in the nursery trade. Like, you need to put a good marketable name on there so more people can get it and enjoy it in their garden. Coming at number 33, we got Acer palmatum Chica.
So Chica, you know, this is a gift from Japan. So you're looking at a weeping maple with small green leaves that are palmate. And in the spring, that turned to a great yellow and orange color.
So this came from mine and Matt's first trip to Japan. And Chica and Hisanori Kojima are good friends of ours. When they interned at Highland Creek Nursery, and we later actually also purchased Highland Creek Nursery years ago, but they interned at Highland Creek Nursery at our good friend Brian Upchurch's, and came and grafted maples with him. And, you know, they came over and visited our nursery, and we were much smaller. And then when we were able to go to Japan, I contacted him and said, hey, could we come by and visit your place? And when we came and visited him, he said, this is a special tree. It came from a temple in my wife's hometown. And, you know, it's got this cool story behind it. It's another Japanese maple, a weeping Japanese maple that came from a temple in Japan. And he said, we're calling it currently Chica, and named after his wife. And so such a beautiful selection and some really beautiful clear yellow fall color.
Extremely vigorous and cascading, about 5 to 6 foot in height by 7 to 8 foot in width in 15 years. Excellent, excellent tree.
I would love to bring someone in who's an expert on temples in Japan or something and try to discuss with them why so many weeping selections are planted at temples. I don't know if there's something about the style, the essence of, like, you know, this habit that's so unique, but that would be something to be really interesting to learn. I mean, you think about all the different weeping selections at temples, and Chica, amazing selection.
Okay, coming in at number 32, horrible name, but a great tree, Acer palmatum, Dr. Brown.
So I mentioned it earlier, and Sean mentioned it about podcast, but man, wish we could have got a better name on this tree. I'm sure this is named after a gentleman named Dr. Brown. I've never met Dr. Brown or heard the story of how this tree came to fruition, but this is a slow-growing red-orange selection that is more dense and weeping than many of the other ornatum types. It's probably one of the slower-growing forms, but this has just some phenomenal next-level color.
So you're looking at about 4 foot by 5 foot in width and height in 10 years. But we go back to that name. This really is one that if you just see the name Dr. Brown, you don't think of it. And it's not in the name, like you say, named after someone, but it's not the color of the tree itself. To see this and to disassociate that name with it, it's an excellent tree, completely underrated because of that name, but it is an excellent tree in the landscape.
Yeah, no, I wish it'd just be better to like call the doctor or Dr. B or something like that. But when people put a name on it, I think it's really important to stick with that name, even if it is a bad name, because they introduced that tree and, that's the name they decided to put on it. And they did it to honor Dr. Brown. We got to remember that as well. I think that's really important. Coming in at number 31, we got Acer japonicum, Abby's Weeping.
So this one has deeply divided green leaves, and this is a lace leaf full moon maple. So you know that your fall colors are really going to pop on this one.
Yeah, I think the main reason this one, people are asked, why did this come above Fairy Lights for a japonicum weeping form? And the only reason that I can really rationalize this in my head is that Abby's Weeping is more weeping. It's a little more vigorous, and because of that, the growth on trees a little more vigorous on weeping selections often weep down a little bit more. Abby's Weeping, excellent small to mid-sized weeping japonicum selection. Much slower than something like an Oregon fern or a green cascade, but it definitely is a nice, slow-growing Acer japonicum that just gives you some phenomenal fall colors.
So you're looking at 2 to 3 foot in height by 3 foot in width in 10 years. So this is one that does great in smaller spaces in the landscape. If you got a smaller spot, it will do great, but you still get those big leaves. And this is also one that you want to give it some protection from the hot afternoon sun.
We've got a nice specimen of this, not too far from the Blue Forest. Actually, I think it may be part of the Blue Forest garden at Buckholtz Nursery. And it's one that the more you see out in the landscape, the more you see this tree, the more you fall in love with it. I know whenever I got to go visit Del Laux and I saw Lillian's Jewel for the first time, he showed me Lillian's Jewel, and the very next tree he went to show me and brag about was Abby's Weeping. And it wasn't his selection, but he was talking about how this is a next level Acer japonicum, and everybody was starting to go crazy for it. And I'd never heard of it at the time. And I was like, sure. Do you have any of those for sale? And we got one and started evaluating it. And the more I've been able to see this tree, the more I've been able to appreciate it. Abby's Weeping, just an excellent weeping japonicum selection for that smaller garden space to really give you that japonicum fall color you love. But it also gets out there a little bit quicker than something like Fairy Lights.
Okay, coming in at number 30, Acer palmatum Sekimori.
So y'all, we're getting into one of the OG maples here at Mr. Maple. Sekimori was one of my dad's first weeping green lace leaves. He may have even had this before he had Verdus. It was one that we fell in love with very quickly. My dad was a big proponent of reading J.D. Veritrees, and Veritrees said this was one of the best weeping selections of the green lace leaves and has one of the best clear yellow fall colors. And it does. Sekimori has a really nice arching habit where it arches outward and isn't just straight cascading, and it arches upward and outward and then down and creates a beautiful arching effect in the landscape and garden. Veritrees also says that you should take trees like this, including any of these weeping selections, plant them on a hill so you can actually look up into the branches and really appreciate the structure of these weeping selections. And that's a cool way to do it. But Sekimori, for me, a very beautiful chartreuse green in the early spring to green for a weeping lace leaf. It's hard to beat it.
You're looking at about 8 to 10 foot over 10 years, and it's going to be slightly wider than it is in its height.
And I say hard to beat it I put this at number 30. Y'all, we still got 29 more lace leaves to go. We got, looks like a few more to go on today's list as well. Coming in at number 29, we have right here, Acer palmatum dissectum Scarlet Princess.
So we're talking about a dwarf lace leaf, just a killer one. And so you got these colors, the scarlet, the red, but it's not the same as Crimson Queen. It's a different type of red, and it pops differently. And I mean, it's just a killer tree.
Yeah, Scarlet Princess was found as a witch's broom by our friends Tom and Nancy Ash on the coast of North Carolina on the cultivar Crimson Queen. The interesting thing about this is the colors appear to be a little more intense, and Scarlet Princess also appears to have just, a little more heat tolerance than Crimson Queen does for us, which is really interesting. Now, Scarlet Princess, it is a witch's broom, so it's going to have a dense, compact habit, but it also creates this really unique, dense, weeping, but yet kind of undulating habit where the branches kind of go upward, downward, and with its very dense structure, it can create almost a weeping ball shape, which is very beautiful, different, and makes a great container plant.
3 foot by 2 foot in 10 years. Like you say, fairy gardens, container, bonsai, great treat for that.
And you do often get some more scarlet colors rather than the crimson colors with Scarlet Princess. I have it on this list. You will see an omission from this list, which is baby lace. While baby lace is a very beautiful lace leaf, it's one of the only other witch's brooms on lace leaves. It doesn't live very well for us. Scarlet Princess does. Very different colors on those two, but if you're looking for a witch's broom lace leaf, Scarlet Princess is the way to go. It's a tree that seems to be durable and just very unique. Every way you watch this tree, from its very intense colors to its dense, undulating, weeping habit, this is a lace leaf that stands out and is great for those smaller spaces.
Okay, coming in at number 28, Acer palmatum English lace.
Now, this one might be a little controversial because we're putting it here in the weeping, and it was selected for being an upright. Well, it's kind of both. And the reason I say that is this was a selection from Quilcene, Washington, found by one of our friends, Jerry Childs. And we met him at a Maple Society meeting, and he's like, guys, y'all got a lot of cool plants. Why don't I send you my 2 evaluations? And there was an English lace 1 and an English lace number 2. And we evaluated both of them for quite a time until he decided to release them. And English lace number 2 became English lace. English lace number 1 just got discontinued. And it was very interesting because we would stake up English lace and it would go upward. If you don't stake it, it's weeping. Well, we'd stake it up and let it go upward, and it makes this beautiful upright kind of habit. And then over time, it starts filling in and then getting this weeping habit off of that. And we started to learn that this is possibly one of the fastest growing lace leaves that's red on the market. Interesting thing is that English lace, you see something like this and you think, where did this tree come from? Because it's got such a unique habit, the way it goes upwards, it spreads out, it gets some weepingness to it. It was actually a vigorous seedling from Sumanagashi. And that's sort of the backstory behind it, is that it was a Sumanagashi seedling. And Sumanagashi is a Matsumuri that's an upright. And the Matsumuris do have that what we call a semi-pendulous habit, so they spread out and the branches sort of cascade a little bit down. Interestingly enough, when you look through Matsumuris, you can find lace leaves because it's the next sort of genetic variation that you find from those seedlings. And that's what we found. That's what Jerry Childs found here with English lace, is a beautiful lace form that's very vigorous. It does develop into weeping over time, but I do recommend staking it up at an early age because it does get some more height to it and gets out there a little bit quicker.
Yeah, you're looking at 10 to 12 foot in height by 15 foot in width in 20 years. Okay, coming in at number 27, Acer palmatum, yellow orange.
And I've been saying for a long time that yellow orange was actually by Yellow Nursery in Europe. Turns out this is actually a selection I was told by the North American Yellow Nursery. It is a next level lace leaf, though. I mean, you've got to realize we've got a lot of lace leaf varieties, and it has a very elongated lobe, almost like something like Washi no-o, where the sublobes aren't as deeply divided unless you look on the new growth. But the color on it is just very unique. I mean, you get this sort of pink-orange color, and after that, you can get some like blue-green kind of colors on Jello orange on the leaf during the summer. You know, it's known and named for its fall color, which is a bold orange. We do have a cultivar highlight on our MrMaple Show on YouTube of this, where you can actually see the fall color and see a specimen out in the landscape. I do recommend you go and watch that. If you're not currently subscribed to our MrMaple Show on YouTube, make sure you do that, because we put out daily content there. And if you like listening to our podcast here, you'll definitely love our MrMaple Show on YouTube as well.
Okay, coming in at number 26, the final one on this list for today, Acer palmatum, Firefall. And not to be confused with Acer ceoboldium. Well, let's say again, Acer, I always have a hard time with that one. Acer ceoboldianum, Firefall.
Or Acer palmatum falls fire. Or Fireball.
These names, what's up with these names?
I know, the names are all sounding close together. But Firefall is a newer selection that I think could become the tree on the market. It has a very nice cascading habit, and it holds its color very well. It's a little slower growing than something like Tamukiyama, but instead of that deep maroon color, you get more picked up reds. And so you can get some maroon colors maybe late summer, but you get more of those picked up red colors. It's almost like you get everything you love about Tamukiyama, how it's heat tolerant, it's easy to grow for a lot of people in the South. It's a beautiful tree out in the garden, but you get all of that with the colors of Crimson Queen, which can't handle the sun. So it is a next level weeping lace leaf that I think more people will be growing, and it could become the staple in the industry in 10 years when people realize how great that tree is.
You're looking at about 4 to 5 foot in height by 5 to 6 foot in width in 10 years. And like you said, this one, when it first started popping up and I got to see it with my own eyes, it does stand out different. It's like you say, Tamukiyama, it looks different, it acts different. So don't get confused with, oh, this is just another red colored lace leaf.
Yeah, I think it's going to become the industry standard. And that's saying a lot, because we have so many selections of lace leaves, but it's also, you know, like we talked about before, it's a great tree with a great name. And often when you have those two things together, it becomes a powerhouse that makes this tree really popular. And I think that's what's going to happen with Firefall. The more people see it and realize how great this tree is. I've had so many people down in South Carolina and Georgia in the heat of just some really hot climates just be telling me this tree, Firefall, is one of the best weeping lace leaves I've ever grown. And when I hear that, I think, you know, that means that I need to be making sure that this tree gets promoted for those heat areas, because it's beautiful, that brighter picked up red color. Y'all, awesome tree coming in today's list at number 26. Now, if you haven't already watched the previous episode, we did air that one last week. That's number 75 through number 51 on top weeping Japanese maples. Next week, guys, we're starting at number 25 and we're going all the way to number 1. So make sure you're subscribed here to catch next week's podcast on the top 25 weeping Japanese maples.
Take care.
God bless.
Have a great day.